Hello, everyone. Welcome back again to the show. What a treat we have yet another. I searched for these people, another incredible musician. And I use the term musician with all the meaning of the world because this is an individual who is a great improviser, just a really great player, improviser. And I'm so pleased to introduce him. This is Nathan Mondry. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nikhil. I'm going to be spending the entire rest of this interview trying to live up to the words of that introduction.
You don't have to. I mean, listen, and again, I was telling this to the great Professor Nicola Canzano. I was saying, why it's always the harpsichord players and the early music players who have so much knowledge. And it's the particular kind of knowledge I really admire, which is that basso continuo sort of orientation. I really like that because they're so straightforward with their information and they really get really amazing practical results. And so Nathan, welcome to the show. And could you just give a little introduction to yourself, just very briefly? We're going to get really deep in, but maybe just tell the audience who you are, what you do, and I'd love to know that.
Yeah, so I grew up in metropolitan Detroit in a little town called Franklin. Detroit, Michigan, I should be clear. This is international audience. I shouldn't assume everyone knows where Detroit is.
Right.
But,
no.
I grew up sort of a suburban household, liked singing from a young age, took piano lessons from when I was 7 years old. You know, the kind of story where my older brothers were taking piano lessons. I wanted to do it too. And my parents didn't have to make me practice. So that was, I guess, a sort of clue for them that, hey, maybe this one actually will like going through it. And, going through the whole music education thing.
How old were you?
I was 7 when I started taking
7.
piano
Okay,
lessons.
7 years old. Great.
Yeah.
And Nathan, did you start out piano? It was piano. Did you learn any other instruments, violin or anything else?
I learned violin for about 4 weeks, and then I decided this is too hard. I don't want to learn this anymore.
It is a hard instrument.
It's a very hard instrument. I was content throughout, middle school and high school to play piano, to sing. I did high school musicals and plays and acted in those. And then it was when I got to my bachelor's degree at University of Michigan during that time. That was when I first really started to get into early music and earlier instruments.
Okay, so wait, let's take a little step back. So did you okay, so I wanted to ask first question about your early training. This is actually not related to training, but your ear. Do you have what is known popularly as perfect pitch or absolute pitch?
Yeah, so the short answer is yes, but that it's much worse than it was, when I was in high school. Because when you get into early music and you discover all the different, possible versions of what A is in different systems, in different countries, in different centuries, in different regions, different, towns, one next to the other, one organ is a different, you get, your brain gets, and your ear gets so scrambled up that I couldn't with any positivity tell you what A440 is.
Really?
Now.
Really? It's not like
I very often now when I give people an A, it's an A415 because
Baroque tuning.
I just was used exactly. So once I hear it, then it's as if I haven't forgotten anything.
Oh, so if you get a little refresher in your ear, will it be back to like normal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
It's so interesting. It's so amazing how some people can do that. So so tell me how did you notice? Okay, so how long did it take for you to kind of like get used? Are you the sort of person who gets annoyed? I mean, if you hear, obviously not now because of your training in early music, But prior to that, I've heard people with perfect pitch say, "Oh, I get annoyed if I don't hear it in the proper, in A440." Is that did you ever have that sensation?
Yeah, I had an adjustment period for sure. There's another friend of mine who's a Baroque violinist who had perfect pitch, and the adjustment for her was much, much more difficult because there, I mean, you literally have to, feel
Mm,
those notes in a way that for, I mean, a keyboard instrument, you're just slotting everything up and then it all still fits in the grid.
right.
So it there was an adjustment, but it wasn't like some decades long thing that I struggled with. Once you've listened to it and been in that world long enough, you did,
And how
you kind
long?
of get
Just
used to
just
it.
a ballpark. How long does that adjustment take?
I mean, it took me probably like a year,
Okay, okay, and then just
but I
come.
mean, it's not really like a problem for me now. Once I
Yeah.
once I know what the gig is, what the instrument pitch is, like I adjust. It's not a problem.
Have you ever wondered, I mean, like about your perfect pitch, like why it is and why some people have it? Have you ever thought about like the just it just randomly seems to happen in a small number of people?
Yeah, I have thought about that. I don't know that I have any particularly eloquent thoughts about it, but I mean, I know that there was a period in my childhood where I didn't know that I had it, and then I wanted to like test myself to see if I could remember pitches.
Hmm.
So like I would, listen to a recording of some classical piece. I would run to the piano in the next room and see if I knew like what the chord was. I'd just sort of like do this for a while until, you know, I mean, how do people like remember like a face perfectly and are able to draw it? I think it's a
Right.
similar sort of sensation, but just
That's
with the
true.
ears.
Yeah. Okay. Now tell me about your. Let's begin with the story of your entry into early music. You talked about it in your undergraduate. What? How did that all happen?
Basically, because of my good friend Nico Canzano, who I've been best friends with since middle school, high school. He was a year ahead of me at University of Michigan.
Okay.
So I entered my freshman year. He'd already been there 1 year. He said, "Hey, I think I'm going to take harpsichord lessons with the harpsichord teacher here. I think you should too." And me, I played harpsichord at a summer camp like a couple years before once. And it was one of those experiences where I thought, "Oh, this is cool. I don't know if I'll ever encounter this again." And then here I am. And then here I am like encountering it and falling in love with it.
Yeah.
And the rest is history at that point.
That's interesting, and you really had that sensation where. And what was it about the harpsichord that really like kind of was that kind of you fell in love with? What aspect of it?
Above everything else, the fact that it is such an unstandardized instrument. You grow up playing piano, you're used to okay, you go to an instrument, there's 88 keys. They're always white alternating with black. There's three, sometimes two pedals, but it's factory standard. And then I was just really into the idea of oh, I could play four harpsichords one after another, and they could all
All be
be
different,
completely different, totally different.
right?
And that was just, fascinating to me. Just, it part of it might have just been the new energy of something that you haven't really spent much time with. But I don't know, the different colors of how they look, the timbres of the actual sound of different plucks, different, there's different strings, different numbers of notes, different keyboards,
Right.
uh all these things that combine to just of course, once you've studied them after a while, there are schools of harpsichords and you start to see the patterns, but they're not necessarily so obvious from someone who first is looking at one and has never seen one before.
So wait, and then this is showing my ignorance on the subject. So there are no factory-made harpsichords that just get churned out as every they mostly handmade.
Well, so the traditionally, yes, they were handmade. Um, in a pre-industrial revolution sense, there were certain builders who we could say developed a certain system of building where, they might have a bunch of apprentices and they like, you know, um, some apprentice will work on this part of the instrument, some apprentice will work on this part. But even then, these are still, radically smaller numbers of people working to build these things than, I don't know, whatever, a Yamaha upright piano production facility.
Right.
Of course, in the early 1900s, when the harpsichord was revived, and some people took on a more modern track with it, then there were sort of harpsichord factories. But in the traditional age of the harpsichord, from the late 1400s to the late 18th century, there wasn't really a harpsichord factory mechanism in the same way there would have been in the early 20th century.
Right. Now, I think wouldn't it be just fun if we just started playing right away? I was just thinking maybe that would set the tone for the rest of the interview, right? So it might be a good idea. So Nathan, just anything you want. I mean, it could be a fugue, it could be anything. I leave the floor to you.
Well, you had suggested before the broadcast to do something related to our issues of having this interview related to internet connectivity.
How about the theme of robustness and strength, a strong connection, so to speak?
I'm into it. Okay. Just give me a key.
Okay. How about B flat?
Okay.
We're talking. Oh yeah, that was so good. Oh Nathan, setting the tone. You. Now you said that you get inspired by a certain. Is that how does that work? So if somebody gives you a word or something, how does that influence the choices you make?
Well, so I mean, because this is fresh enough, I can do a little play-by-play of the thought process. So you said the word robust. So instantly, my first thought was big, fat, meaty chord to start out. Something with more than 4 notes, at least, for sure, in both the hands combined. And then robust, maybe that brings to mind French overture, something with, a very, strong affect to it. And then you mentioned French overture, then a fugue comes to mind afterward. Maybe beyond that, it becomes much more subconscious. But those are some of the things that spring to mind when I first get a little burst of inspiration.
Yeah, I asked Professor Canzano Nico. I asked him that's the big question, the thought process, because really, it makes me wonder, how far ahead are you thinking in the present moment as you're playing? So are you just like, let me get through this sequence and then I'm at a certain juncture, then I decide then what I'm going to do, because you clearly have a lot of ammunition, so to speak, before you can go in different directions. But how far do you think ahead if you were making choices?
So there's I would say there's two different tiers of thought. So on the one hand, there's the large structural thought of, okay, if I'm doing a French overture thing, I know that there's this dotted section, there's a fugue that's coming after, and maybe that's set up by either a tonic or a dominant chord. I don't necessarily decide that right at the beginning, but I know that once I've gone through enough of these little paths, those are the two goals in front of me. And depending on where I end up, one of those will make more sense to me.
Right, right.
So that's the like the background tier that's going on. The more like minute or second by second, phrase by phrase sort of tier, usually I have in mind like whatever, a 2-bar phrase, a 4-bar phrase, something that is on its like neutral form is a symmetrical number that then I can, manipulate and twist and cut or expand as I want. But yeah, basically, I'm thinking in a very like even numbered sort of phrases to, let's say if I start in B flat, then okay, there's going to be a B flat major chord that's coming in 2 bars, or it's going to be an F major chord or some other chord that from the key that I start in, you don't have to think so hard to figure out what comes next.
Now let's talk about
right.
Let's talk about phrases. Sorry to cut you off, Nathan. I just wanted to ask you. You mentioned phrases. What
Yeah.
constitutes a phrase in your mind? How long is it? What are the elements that in you? Is it like super long? Is it a small unit? What's a phrase to you?
Oh, I mean that's a widely variable question. But in the course of improvising, it's often determined by tempo. Actually, tempo is probably a big one because if it's a very fast piece, I'm thinking in, let's say 4-bar phrases or 8-bar phrases. And the harmonic rhythm, like how much the harmonies themselves actually change per bar also determines that. Right? So if I'm doing something that is a slow piece, an adagio, a largo, something, and maybe there's anywhere from 2 to 4 harmony changes per bar, maybe I'm only thinking in terms of like a 2-bar phrase. But it's greatly variable. I don't have a one size fits all answer for that.
Now I have a little bit more detail in that question. So do you make the phrase up on the spot, and do you like say I'm in this particular chord, and so I'm going to choose some notes from the chord. I'm going to maybe decide, it would be nice to decorate one of the chord tones. I might add a passing note. Like, how do you generate the phrase? Like, what's your idea? I mean, that's a very broad question, but like, let's just take an example of a phrase. Like, you're in B flat. So like,
yeah.
Do you take it from literature? I mean, and then you say, I have this idea, and then I'm going to manipulate it to make it my own. Or on the spot, do you just say, I have a chord in mind, or like a direction I want to take?
I mean, there are various, stock and conventional choices that I've encountered in music, I've encountered in repertoire, I've, accumulated in practice sessions where on one level, it's basically like, even if I'm coming up with it on the spot, I've seen this scenario before, or I've seen that scenario. So in one level, it's a part of my brain that's just like, activate this sequence now.
Yeah.
Or,
path A, path B, yeah.
Right. So I mean, in one sense, I think any good improviser has probably, truly never done something for the first time when they actually do it in front of an audience.
I know what you mean. A lot of times, I know what you mean. You're treading you're treading old ground that you've practiced, but you are in this moment kind of mixing them up, though, units, right?
For sure. I mean, in a lot of ways, the actual like spontaneity comes from you deciding what to put where and when, not necessarily the like.
I'm going to reinvent the wheel I'm going to reinvent the
Right.
wheel
No.
every single time.
Right. Like I would say from my personal experience, like that feeling of actually feeling like I come up with something new happens, I don't know, once every 20, once every 40 improvisations. Like normally it's, I'm going to do something like I've done before, but it'll be in a different key, or it'll be, it's this sequence, but I'll try this figuration over it now.
Yeah. I think
Um,
honestly, I think you're being quite modest in terms of fresh, but I mean, I get your point. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. Now the one thing is, what's the answer to get many different? How do you build up your vocabulary? Is the real question here.
Well, okay. So why don't I just take a little fraction of a sequence
Okay.
and show you different ways that, again, this is not in the heat of the moment, but
Yep.
we can still look at it from a, objective or far back point of view so that
Yeah.
we can see different possibilities.
Can I choose the
Okay.
sequence?
Oh, sure. Okay.
Oh, my favorite. It's everyone knows this is my favorite. Well, I'm telling everyone now. Up 4, down 5, or down 4, or down 5, up 4.
I mean, yeah, this descending circle of fifths is a classic.
It's a classic.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that sequence. Literally, I mean that the amount of improvisations that I've done where there's a sequence, and if that sequence isn't in that, is an extremely small number. Okay,
and the
so
one in the minor is so beautiful.
That's nice too.
Yeah.
Let's stick with major just
Okay.
to keep it relatively simple diatonically.
Okay.
So, let's do B flat major, right? So if this is our right, okay? So that's our basic little element. Okay? We can do a version where the bass is simple and the right hand is doing some kind of scale thing. Right? That's one version. We could take that and split it between the hands. We could do a totally different figuration, like or we could do something totally different. Right? I mean, it's taking what is a very simple building block and just carving different, little images on it.
Do you have weaker keys and strong? I mean, everyone does, but like a guitarist hate D flat. But like for instance, like do you have keys that like you don't usually play as much? I mean, the harpsichord, maybe the temperament changes that a little bit, right? It makes that equation somewhat. It forces you. But are there keys that I just need to know because it seems like you're so fluent in everything.
Well, I mean, I think in general, harpsichordists don't love to play in like C sharp major or F sharp major. Partly because of temperament, right? Those keys don't necessarily sound super in tune. Also, just sometimes it depends on the actual instrument, because the keyboards are not always like built in the same sizes. So certain keys with accidentals are actually harder to play. But I when I have students, I tell them do everything in every key if you can, because it does make it easier when you have to
right.
improvise and someone gives you a key, right? There's no reason on a certain practical level to be afraid of any key, especially on what is a very grid-like instrument with a keyboard, where everything is essentially just you shift up and down whatever amount you need, and it's you just move the hands to the right place.
Now there's who is it who said there's a certain number of schemes that are just defined by the bass, and yet there's many keys to practice them in. There's many variations on each sequence. You can get quickly overwhelmed. What's a good like battle plan to kind of progressively learn them all? Is there, if you're teaching students, like how do they not get overwhelmed? Because you could just tell them, all right, these 10 things in all 24 keys. I'll see you next week. It's very tough.
Yeah, it's a thing I struggle with a lot. I mean, you could probably just spend a month on like circle of fifths flatward, and number of my favorites would be descending 7/6 or ascending 5/6.
That's your favorite?
Uh,
Okay, show us. That's got
well,
to.
favorite. They're ones that I think are nice to do in the very beginning.
Yeah.
But I mean, so right, if we're doing the descending 7/6, uh, right, I'm a fan of that sequence. I think it's very related in a lot of ways to circle of fifths
Yeah.
flatwards, because you could do a version of that where essentially it sounds like circle of fifths, but it's just alternating with first inversion chords. Kind of anyway. Right? If you're thinking like da 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 da. There's a lot of, I mean, there are in one sense.
Yeah, I see it.
In one sense, there are a lot of sequences, but in another sense, they are all just slight variations of each other.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. And I added another question with that, which is, who is the guy? There had to be some. Why is it the case that people say Baroque music has no seventh chords? I mean, have you heard that before? I mean, I know
I have not heard that, and it's very untrue.
No, it's very untrue. But I remember people saying, "Oh, Baroque music, they don't use many seventh chords. It's always like a lot of the harmony is simpler." And for some reason, that seems to be in kind of a sort of, because maybe what they're thinking is, just like maybe like CEGB and just holding it like that. Maybe in some cases they do that in contemporary music now, or just those, because they always like to think of layering things in thirds, but you actually hear that interval all the time, in nine sevens. So
yeah, I mean, if we want to give that person more credit than they're due, we could amend the statement to say, generally speaking, we don't have sevenths that are unprepared. Right? So like any consonants can become a dissonance in the right scenario.
Yeah.
Right? So like, for example, right, that top voice, which starts as a consonance, becomes a dissonance and a seventh on that chord, but that's because it's prepared.
Yeah. I don't know.
So I mean,
it's something I've heard. It's something. It's a weird one. There are many weird ones. I mean, the other weird one is figured bass is two things. It's only for the Baroque. It's only like it's this accompaniment. That's it. It's accompaniment in the Baroque. So that's the box that one. And the other one is figured bass is a blend of 19th century harmonic analysis and that. So there's two kind of weird kind of popular perceptions of the thing. But let me ask you something. Before early music, did you have a pretty conventional, like theoretical training in North America?
yeah, so I mean, like ever since I had piano lessons, I would have like, theory workbooks and things that I would fill out as part of my lessons. And it was all, pretty standard, like Roman numeral based theory. But to be honest, and partly because of my perfect pitch, I went by ear for a long time. And then it was actually learning basso continuo that allowed me to actually like understand the relationships in the music beyond just, recognizing, oh, that's CEG or that's, BDG.
Wait,
like to actually understand.
Can you expand on that? So wait, what was happening with your perfect pitch when you were doing the other theoretical analysis?
So in other words, I could recognize the individual notes within a chord and recognize them as that, but not necessarily know right away that's a dominant chord. That's like these are concepts, of course, which come from tonal theory, but to actually like understand the relationships between different chords and different harmonies, and to know like, okay, this is a sort of chord that happens here because rhetorically speaking, this is what happens right before the end of a phrase.
Right.
Or this is those sort of more like subtle differences.
Yeah.
Continuo helped me really understand a lot more.
And how did it help you in that respect? Because it's reading from the bass, but what does that mean with regard to your perfect pitch?
Well, what it really means is, I mean, understanding like where phrases end and why phrases end where they end. Right? So, I mean, one level of continuo is just the very literal. Okay,
Mm,
that's a C with a six on top of it, so that's A minor first inversion chord,
mm.
or right? You can understand continuo literally from that perspective, but it's another thing to understand like, okay, so this phrase has been going on for 3 bars, and we know that there's has to be a resolution coming soon. That's why the composer chose this kind of chord and not this other kind of chord, because metrically it would like make it imbalanced, or these sort of things that you pick up once you've like played enough of these pieces and you've seen enough of the things that composers repeat in similar kind of scenarios.
Right. Now, I asked Professor Canzano about the rule of the octave in our very first interview, not the, and because he had such a rich basso continuo upbringing, it's almost like, yeah, that's kind of like a bit cookie cutter, and it's kind of like that's the I understood where he was coming from, because I think even in Durante, I think Professor Peter Van Toor was saying like the even the term rule of the octave is quite new. They had many ways of coloring and ornamenting and ascending and descending scale, not just one particular way. Of course, one became quite standard, Dondrieu. You see it in Dondrieu. But can I get your perspective on like learning the rule of the octave, the topic? It's quite a popular one. So what's your perspective on that, especially when you're dealing with a lot of students who are new to early music?
I mean, I do think it's useful. We can have a debate about how useful and to how many scenarios it actually applies. But, I mean, the what I think is the most useful thing about Rule the Octave is it teaches you how to improvise a scale when you don't have any figures,
Hmm.
right? So, I mean, very often in the 17th and 18th century, you might have a continual part that someone gives you. Someone gives you a bass line and there's no figures, but you still have to come up with something that will sound good. And again, I think the best benefit of the Rule the Octave is it gives you a few different paths for doing that when you don't have any information at all that you can, just copy from the composer.
Right. And there's a few versions of it. I know like CPE Bach has a few. All the Neapolitans, I mean Fenaroli is a very famous standardized one, but there's a few. So like is there a particular one that you use or teach, or do you have any preference?
I mean, the Fenaroli one is standard, um, so it's generally one that I use. But I mean, I like to alert students to the different versions. I
Right.
mean, Handel has a different version where a lot of it is actually like, for example, in the position of like the second note of the rule of the octave, where very often it's a 6/4/3 chord in a lot of harmonizations, right? That kind of a chord. In Handel, and for the similar parts of the scale that have that same role where it's going to either the fifth or the unison, he will use just like a 6/3 chord, that sort of thing,
Hmm. Right.
which has just a different character. It's a bit more, um, let's say, straightforwardly diatonic. I mean, the weird thing about the rule of the octave, of course, is that there's like the dominant of a dominant feeling for a couple of those chords, right? If we're doing on the C major on the way back down,
Yep, yep.
that chord,
Yeah, yeah.
which from a
Why
from a
is that
certain like
there? Yeah, that's it's got a beautiful sound to it. It almost has the key of the dominant there, right? The
right,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's, I mean, it's sort of from a tonal theory perspective is a bit, kind of hard to put its place in. But functionally speaking, that kind of a chord, which is, I mean, we could call that a passing chord of some sort.
Mm.
It functions just the same way as, like a leading tone chord would. So instead of to have, they both are fulfilling the same role, leading
Right.
us to that next chord.
Right. Now, speaking of rules, basso continuo, and I asked Professor Canzano this pretty recently. ton of rules. It's long on rules, and even worse, it's long on examples of rules too. So it's like there's a lot of things. There's a lot of information. I mean, this is a craft. It's an art. It takes time. It's a craft. So what is your game plan with students in we talked about vocabulary, but this is more about the rules. I mean, CPE box, the true art. I mean, that's that section on thorough bass. I mean, that's tough. So, like, how do you teach a student rules that's progressive and step by step and is fun and all those sorts of good things.
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways you could go about it. I think part of it depends on the student and whether you have the sense of, is this someone who just kind of wants to get a taste of basso continuo, or is this someone who you think is going to be like
This is a
the
wrap.
next Gustav Leonhardt, or I don't know. I mean, there's so many different paths. I like introducing students to Handel's Lessons for Princess Anne,
Hmm.
which is a very good collection of exercises that are both continuo and composition based. So, some of the exercises in there is basically like a little excerpt of a piece where he will, for example, he'll give you the motive for like a little fugal thing. The first voice will be written out, and then he'll give you clues on how to put in the other voices.
Hmm.
What's nice about his particular basso continuo exercises is there's actually very few words. It's basically like, just exercise after exercise, like, okay, root position, then you're adding first inversion. So, in other words, like, for the student who wants to get into the more fine details, then we can introduce other texts after that. But I think it's a nice way to just get people playing and not actually doing too much analyzing and overthinking in the beginning. In my experience,
Hmm.
students in the very beginning, it's a crucial time where you have to make sure that they aren't, that they're interested, but that they don't think, oh my God, how on earth am I going to climb this mountain of information?
Right,
I
right.
think in the very beginning, it's important to get them feeling like you don't have to have everything right away to still realize music and make it sound nice.
I have a question just came to mind, just like that, which is, how would you teach basso continuo to a young child? Like, let's say there's a kid who's interested in music, very like got some talent and is curious about basso continuo. I know from experience that you can't talk and talk and talk with a child. You have to play. But like, so like, how do you explain what's a 5/3 chord, what's a 6 chord? How do you explain these things?
Uh, that's a great question. I've not really worked on Partimento or got continua with very young students, but I
But
mean,
in a
just like
sense, like
any,
beginners are kind of like kids in a way, even though they're adults. Right?
yeah. Well, I mean, the notation aspect of it is the first barrier that has to be overcome,
Yeah.
right? To recognize, well, one that like this is a third, but by continuo literature, this is also a third, right? To recognize that like the number, generally speaking, we're talking about continuo
Yeah.
from like the middle and high Baroque. We're not talking about like Monteverdi, early Italian stuff. But when a composer writes, okay, they write a six above a continuo note. To know that the six doesn't always literally mean the sixth above, but could mean the 13th above. It just depends on what octave you want to play the note.
Mhm.
Because in continuo, nine, occasionally a 10, is typically like the highest figure that
Mm.
we deal with because all the other versions are repeatable in different registers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I would say the first barrier is just to have them recognize like what it means to play an interval above a bass, and then to recognize that to have that interval be in a particular register above the bass can still be expressed by the same type of notation.
Yeah. What's in your as a teacher, what's the most effective and I'm sure you know what works, what doesn't work. What have you found really effective in teaching basso continuo? You mentioned Handel, that's a great, but I'm thinking also in terms of explaining it to a student. Is it just like Handel? Lots of exercises, just do the exercises, not so much talking.
No, I mean it's of course it depends on the age of the student. It
Yep.
depends on how many things you think they already know. I mean, always there's some assessment that I have to do with the student,
Yeah.
see, do they know how to play in different keys? Do they know like what tonic and dominant harmonies are? I mean, in many ways, you could just, boil it down to that in the beginning, making sure they understand like some chords are like the goal and some chords are the chords that get you to the goal, and to like feel the difference between those chords. I mean, it's again different with every student, but sometimes you could just spend in the beginning like a ground bass, which is a great way to teach a progression, but also to teach variation, to teach, how you take the same material and do different things with it.
Right. Now,
Um,
we talked about beginners. Now, you're clearly, I mean, like, it would be a shame if you like it was we only spent this time talking about one demographic, but now let's say you had an experienced person coming to you and say, "I've done lots of accompaniment, but I don't really know how to take it to that improvisation level." How would you take it from the chord playing to a more, you know, into more improvisation territory?
well, I mean, as I'm sure you've probably discussed with other guests, I mean, Partimento is a great sort of, gateway in between, let's say, paperless, memory inspired improvisation. We could say on one level, maybe that's like the highest standard that like we think of when we think of an improviser, someone who doesn't have any visual aid at all. They're just going on like internal feelings
Mm,
and shapes that they can come up with.
right.
So generally in my experience, when that oftentimes a student will come who is very gifted with playing an instrument, they have all sorts of repertoire, they have experience with basso continuo, but they've just not done the next step of like making pieces up on their own.
Yeah.
um, so Partimento is great for that because it kind of gives you both. It's a piece that already has a defined structure
Mm,
and has some, but there's usually not just one solution. There's often, even within, a standard solution, there can be layers of difference in terms of actually realizing it.
right.
Um, so, I think Partimento is a great gateway into that. I mean, also just making people compose is, I think, a very important part of it. Sometimes, improvisation is just fast motion composition.
Yeah. Now
So
I have to.
once
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Nathan.
no. So it's just, a lot of it comes from self-esteem and a musician feeling like, well, I can play all of this music, but I can't come up with anything on my own.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of like, feed that malnourished plant inside of them so that they can actually feel like, okay, I can create music. It's not rocket science. You just have to be aware of a few things structurally and make it, if it's a piece that exists in a certain meter and a certain phrase structure, that it all just kind of like fits.
Right. Right. Now, listen. We when people talk about Partimento, we talk about Partimento collections and all of that. But this is so awesome. I mean, you write your own Partimento. I mean, what level does that have to be? That's got to be a few levels above. Like, I mean, writing your own Partimento. People are dying in book one, and here you are writing your own Partimento. And I want to draw the audience's attention to your wonderful IMSLP page. It has you're a composer. You compose lots of pieces. But let's talk about the Partimenti you've written. Now I see there's a Ritornello one, concerto Partimento, a fugue
Yeah.
Partimento. Maybe would you mind? Should we take a look at some of them and maybe you could explain your
Sure.
Partimento?
What could we start with actually one of the unpublished ones I sent you? There's this Versetto
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Partimento.
Okay, yeah. Let me bring that up. And why don't you just describe it while I'm bringing it up?
Yeah, so this is um for lack of a more refined way to say it, this would be like, you know, a beginner's first kind of a like fugal partimento is sort of the pedagogical aim I had in mind. So a piece which is, it's got imitations, it's got a very small subject. It introduces different clefs, um, not so much in the way of sequences per se, but it's just a small compact piece to get someone comfortable with Partimento language and notation.
So here it is. And
Right.
okay.
Very often in these imitative genres of Partimento, it's all written on one staff. And sometimes, there will be the introduction of the second voice on the staff that introduced the first voice, right? So we see that in the first line. And then we see that there's a tenor clef at the end, which is a clue for the performer that, okay, here's where the next voice comes in. And of course, once you've played enough of these kind of things, you know that the piece doesn't go like this. So I'll go from the beginning and I'll show you how not to play measure 4.
Okay.
So from the beginning we have right? So you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to complete the two voices that come right before that. So right, in this case, I would choose as my solution something like this. Right, so the G sharp resolves down to the A, the B natural resolves, or I should say the G sharp resolves up to an A, the B natural resolves up to a C natural, so that when measure 4 comes, the two voices are still continuing, right? And the idea of this sort of a notation is to basically show you that, to come up with a fugue and express it in one voice can often be understood just from continuo figures. You don't necessarily need to keep track of everything that you would think when you think of like a Bach fugue or something with a very long fugue subject where you think, how are they putting all those things together? No, the idea is that it's actually very simple. And it's basically that, motifs, melodies, subjects, they are ultimately a linear expression of harmony.
Right.
So I could, for example, now do a complete version of this piece and just show you how this might go. Okay.
Awesome. That was great. Wow. Actually, we actually have a bunch of slides that we prepared. See, this is the thing. Once I get talking, I forget our game plan. So let's get back on track here. So that's great. We have actually a bunch of great examples that we should talk about.
Okay. Let's do the invention Partimento then.
Okay. Let's pull that one out. Okay. So give a description of this one now.
Yeah, so this is very much inspired by Durante, right? There are the different partimenti where he will often give you, the first couple of measures and say, this is the basic way to do this piece. Now you do the rest. And so I've given an example of how I think the opening should go, and since it's an invention, we are expecting the voices to trade off, right? So to show you the very first line and the little incipit that I've given.
Yeah, it's just like Durante. He has that incipit, right? That's cool.
Right, and so that's supposed to be enough to tell you how to figure out the rest of the piece if you so want.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, just to basically say that like this is a lesson in invertible counterpoint, right? The thing that you can do in the right hand, you can do in the left hand, and the thing that you were doing in the left hand, you can do in the right hand. It's also a little exercise in showing you how to come up with, well, transpositional things, right? To recognize when there's a sequence and to know that, oh, the thing that I was just doing in the half bar before, I do in the next half bar, but down a step. Like, for example, where I just stopped, right? I stopped, I guess, the beginning of measure 6.
Right.
So, right, if we had from the beginning, then that becomes in the right hand. That part of the bass line switches. And then, in my opinion, since I wrote the piece, I can say that.
Exactly.
Then this little 16th note figure that we just had comes back, and then I think you're supposed to do that for the next another bar and a half. And then we have another little sequence here, so that you as you go through these things, you start to discover, okay, certain things are more strict about what we're supposed to do, which is essentially when there's the actual statement or the counter subject. And then there are passages in the piece, which is usually in between those moments, where it's a bit more free what you decide to do.
Right.
Especially when you get to like cadences, like in measure 10. I would say there's not an obvious solution for what to do.
Right.
But
maybe you could draw on your previous lessons and throw them in here.
Yes. Okay. So, for example, right, in a lot of ways, what's the purpose of a cadence? It's to affirm the key that we've just ended up in. So, if I had my Partimento student here and I was advising them on what to do in measure 10, I would say the idea is that the right hand is probably going to end up on a G by measure 11 downbeat. So that could be expressed in all sorts of ways, but let's say, for example, right, that's a very comfortably standard sort of solution that you could do. There, you could also do something where you mix a bit of the 16th note figuration that we had before, culminating in a trill. And it's basically, I mean, again, I didn't design this piece to be played only one way. There are multiple solutions, and as long as it's more or less an expression of the implied harmonies, and the subjects and counter subjects appear at the right places, and you cadence well, you're gonna make me happy.
Pass. You get an A. Why don't you go through the whole thing? I mean, it sounds great. Let's go through it.
Sure, I'll come up with a version.
Awesome. One take, ladies and gentlemen. One take. Look at this guy. This guy is awesome. Okay, Nathan, what what should okay, we tackle the concerto Partimento?
We
Oh,
could, or we could take a little fugue interlude if we want
okay.
to go into some of those
Do you want to
subjects.
do the Partimento Fugue A4, Fuga A4, or is there another one?
Or I meant even just improvising fugues from some of the different subjects I gave you.
Absolutely, that sounds great. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's take a look at this Louis Couperin subject.
Oh, okay. I can
So
even pull it.
okay, this is a subject which, let's say, we could do in something like A minor, 17th century, you know,
Is it this one, Nathan?
tonality versus, yes,
Okay.
yes. So tonality versus modality in the middle of the 17th century is a complex subject. But let's say that I'm going to improvise a prelude non mesuré, which just basically means a prelude, an unmeasured prelude. So in that sense, this is a type of prelude notation which it's all expressed in whole notes because the idea is the actual rhythms that you would want to introduce as the performer. There's some fluidity with it, but very often in these Louis Couperin preludes, there's an unmeasured prelude which surrounds a fugue in the middle. So I will do a little prelude with a little fugue in the middle, and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
I
Nathan.
tried to I tried to throw in a pedal entry for you there. I don't know if you could tell, but
I heard, and I also heard my favorite sequence too. I heard a lot of things. I mean, so good. Nathan, there's a couple of things I want to ask you. So, for instance, um, do you in the repertoire, do you know, and have you played a lot of fugues yourself? Like, have you played many fugues, or is a lot of it also theoretical, like you constructing it in a lab, or do you like do you need to know? Basically, my question is: do you need to play a lot of fugues to be good at fugues? It seems like a ridiculous question, but
I mean, yes, I think so. um, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a version of this where someone has only like studied fugues and not played them, and maybe they could then do it. But I would view it as unlikely. Um, I don't know. I've probably read at this point in my life hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fugues.
right.
Um, so and that might just be Bach. Like if we include other composers too. No, I
and
mean,
yeah,
I think a very important part of if you want to, in whatever fugal style we're talking about, if you want to do it well, you just have to devour lots and lots of music so that
right,
you're right. We're trying to reconstruct a language that people aren't speaking, so to
right.
speak. So you have to immerse yourself in it to really feel like you can become fluent in it.
As a question I ask all the improvisers, which is how has all this improvisation knowledge and this skill affected the way you play repertoire? So how do it? Does it? I mean, was there a point? I never asked you this, but were you always an improviser? Like prior to the early music, were you always kind of improvising? Was that something you just always did? Um, when you in classical music, everyone plays repertoire. It's just a given. But with this, armed with this knowledge, do you find that you just approach it differently?
Yeah, so I would plunk around with certain things when I was younger. I don't think I was particularly good at any of it. I didn't really like have this more, let's say, focused approach to like improvising in styles until I don't know, some point late in my undergrad I started to get into it. Um, I mean, I did a lot of my very thorough training came in the course of my degree in Basel, which for a couple of years was in improvisation. So I specifically, overdosed on a lot of this stuff. But as far as how it affects playing repertoire, yeah, I mean, it would be hard for it not to change how you view repertoire afterwards.
Like how
I mean,
so?
so I mean, this is probably also because I'm a composer too. It gives me a certain license when I'm looking at a piece of music to respect it, but also not treat it as if it's some like sacred text, which is how I think a lot of people approach the
Mhm.
the score when they play from right, exactly. And I think one that's not it's not, even if you feel that way about a piece of music and you feel it deeply in your heart, when you actually play from it, I think that's not a great attitude to have. I think it's just as important to recognize, um, you know, basically you go through a piece and you realize the points where a composer could have done something totally different.
Mm.
And they might have done it the way they did because they didn't like the other possibilities, or they wanted to just put something down as a place marker and, trust that the performer would know what to actually do with it.
Yeah.
And that involves a certain confidence to be able to, one, there's a name that you recognize and a piece that you recognize, but there's still a part of you that thinks, well, but I can bring something to this that someone else might not have. So I don't know. I think it gives you a certain just more flexibility with a piece of music, and to recognize that the goal is not to um I don't know, like
I'm
play.
yeah, I'm so with you. Totally with you. I'm amazed we can say it today. I mean, before you had to say it in hush, in closed doors. You had to say that you couldn't. The way we're speaking, we sound like radicals. It's unbelievable. Now the mood has changed, and I'm so happy that someone can say it now, and no one's gonna bring the pitchforks. It's unbelievable. I mean, it was hostile. Let's be honest. It was so
Yeah.
hostile in the
Well,
first, the 20th
a-
century. Bizarre behaviors.
absolutely. I think a very big part of this is just like, well, we've had the recording industry going now for a good, 100 plus years. And I think on a certain level, people are tired of hearing the same great work played a certain way or recorded by
Mm,
20 of the greatest artists of their generation. It's not enough anymore to just,
yeah,
oh, I'll do it and I'll be the 21st person to do it this way.
yeah,
Like, no, it demands, we're in a new era. People can, you know, stop listening to you for in 5 seconds if they don't like what they hear right from the beginning.
yeah.
Uh, People can go check out this type of music, or they can go, go do this activity. I mean, music doesn't have the place of being the prime form of entertainment that it did 200 years ago.
Right, right.
So I think that demands, from us as performers and people who, you know, present programs to the public. It demands a certain, level of freshness and creativity that I think before was suppressed to some degree because it was viewed as, you're doing work that's on the side. That's not what you mainly should be focusing on.
Yeah, this is
I'm just
so
grateful
weird.
that all those hours that I potentially wasted actually turned out to be useful for something.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's a start of something new. I really believe something is happening. Now, here's a question I have regarding HP. Um, uh, is there an American style of realization versus a European style? This was brought to my attention quite recently. Some Europeans would say, "Oh, this is a very American way of improvising or American way of playing interpretation." And also, you mentioned Basel. Could you also just mention who you studied with and the kind of things you did over there?
Yeah, well, okay. So to get to your first point, um, yes, I've been told there is an American versus European way of doing these things.
Yeah,
I don't know how much validity it holds, but I
yeah.
have been told that. But and been told that about my playing too. That when I was in Europe, I played like an American. Um, I think also I have been told in the past sometimes when I wear a certain artsy hat or something
You
that I
transform.
that I must that I must know jazz, and the way that I play shows that I'm a jazz musician. So I don't know if it's just a catch-all for like American continuo means that they're like jazz players in disguise or something. I have no idea what it actually means. Um, but yeah, and so in Basel, my main two improvisation teachers were Markus Schwenkreis and Emmanuel Divelek.
Okay.
Marcus, I worked on harpsichord improvisation with, and with Emmanuel, I worked on organ improvisation.
Okay. And what kind of like lesson plan was it? And what did you guys work on?
Oh, I mean, there's different things all the time. I mean, the goal of the program is that you prepare for a final like master's recital,
Right.
which in my case involved a mix of original composition and then different improvisation tasks. So like, there was someone handed me a fugue subject and I improvised a prelude and fugue. Um, I did like a
Based.
biblical.
That's
Yeah, sure.
a
I did on the organ. I did a biblical sonata improvisation where the day before the recital, I was given like verses of text that I then had to like fashion a series of movements off of. It was in this case Noah's Ark. So
Wow. So
I had a
there's
little movement about.
deluge in your piece.
Oh yeah, there was a flood. There was a flood movement for sure. Yeah.
That's so
Um,
cool.
So I mean, just we would focus on different things. Like sometimes it was just on like concerto improvisation. So like taking a ritornello theme that could be pre-composed or come up with on the spot, and then improvising different interludes and things. Worked on suite improvisation. So sometimes that would involve writing a bass line for an allemande, a courant, a sarabande, and a
Yeah.
jig,
Now
and
you're,
then
that's
improvising
a you said a SUIT, not
TE.
yeah, not a sweet improvisation. That's a different thing, right?
No, not SWEET.
But I'm sure it was a sweet improvisation too. Okay, so
Yes. Well, so
yeah, go ahead.
no. So I mean that actually has some. I mean, in historical improvisation, some of the methods that are used are more speculative than others. When it comes to suite improvisation, there actually is this guy Neat, spelled
Oh yeah, yeah.
Nied. Yeah, you've come across that name.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he published this Musikalische Handleitung, which is an all-encompassing treatise of many different things. But he has a section on, yes, exactly. So he has a section, and I believe that would be in book 2. Yeah, in part 2.
Okay.
Where he basically shows you how to take a bass line. So he provides a bass line that you then can manipulate to become an allemande, a courant, and he goes through all the different
Wow.
dances. And so that's a method that I've used with students before, to you fashion a bass line, and then basically the characters of the different movements inspire you to make the appropriate metrical and whatever harmonic changes you need to make.
Right. Now, Nathan, as we wrap up, I wanted to ask, like, you know so much, but are there things that you're working on? Are you like, I need to work on this week? Or, I mean, are there things that you are like, I need to learn a bit new things? What are the sorts of things that you're like working on that you have on your diary?
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, I'm always working on fugal improvisation. That can always get better. And that I've noticed that sometimes if I go a month without improvising a fugue, the first few times I go back and doing it, it's terrible, it's horrible. Like I really just like anything, if you don't do it all the time, you lose it. I don't know. Some things that I have been interested in the past that I would like to get back into is some more Renaissance style improvisations. There's this guy, Santa Maria, who he published a treatise in the 16th century on different sorts of composition and improvisation related tasks. One of them is how to improvise a fantasia, which I had spent a good time in Basel working on, but I would like to bring that back under my fingers.
That was pre-basso continuo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, pre-basso continuo. But and so a lot of the things that you have to memorize in this, he has basically like different sorts of progressions that, again, you learn how to do them. You learn how to do them in as many different keys as you can, different modes in his case.
Right.
But all fun, useful stuff.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, we should end off with some music. What do you think? What should we want to pick one of those one of those subjects?
Yeah, okay, sure. So I did a French one. Now we can pick an Italian one.
Okay, there's Corelli Albinoni. Which one should we do?
Here, let's do this the second Corelli subject, which is very fun and I think might be recognizable to some people.
Oh, nice.
I'll just play the subject. I'll play the subject really briefly, and then I'll do a prelude and a fugue off of it. But so. So that's that subject. Okay, so prelude and fugue.
Oh,
Oh, I
fugue
didn't
time.
get to the I didn't get to the
You
fugue
didn't
yet.
get to the fugue. Oh man. Okay, fugue.
I'm-
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I just was. I love that.
that's what we're all waiting for,
Yeah.
right?
Oh man. Oh man. Wow. 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 That's so good. I mean, this is why I have the show. It's for myself. I felt like I got better just listening to that. That's amazing.
Oh, that's way too nice of you, but
Oh
thank you.
man. I mean, what was I doing in my early music education? I should have been this I should have been exposed to this from the beginning. And you know what's funny? I went to a contemporary school, a jazz school, and I remember there was a great teacher. He passed away recently. His name was Barry Harris, and he said, and it was funny in one of his DVDs, his famous workshop DVDs. This is a jazz teacher, right? And he turns to the group and he says, what we really need. What we really need is we need one of those old figured bass teachers because that's what we really need. And he said, people say they're so old, but they're too old and all of that. But no, that's what we really need. We need figured bass. And again, I mean, like, look at the fruit. look what's happening. This is awesome. I mean,
I mean, yeah, you can draw a direct line from my first basso continuo lessons to today for sure. Basso continuo is king.
It's awesome. And as I end off, I would just want to say, I mean, obviously, I mean, people are going to be gobsmacked by your playing. And if Nathan, if people want to take lessons with you, how are they going to reach out to you? Here is your website. I mean, I'm surprised you're not famous. So here we go. This is it. Here we go. Nathan Mondry. So you have a website, but you're working on it, right? You're building it up. Is that right?
Yeah. So my professional website is a bit of a work in progress. This is my web page.
Okay.
On the Department of Music for Cornell University, which
Okay.
is where I'm currently a doctoral student.
Great.
You can email me at my address, which you
It's
can
down
see
here, I
underneath.
think. Yeah. Right.
Yes. That anyone who's interested in having Zoom improvisation lessons or lessons of any sort with me can email me through that.
I mean, ridiculous. I mean, it's obscene. I mean, I'm saying this is another path that I want the audience to be exposed to, know that it exists. And if you want to take lessons, the people are around, And I'm telling you, Nathan, I'm going to go practice right after this interview. It's so inspiring. So
That's
inspiring.
very nice of you, Nikhil. Thank
Wow.
you.
And do you want to plug anything? Is there anything you want to mention? Upcoming concerts or workshops or anything you want to just mention to my audience, things you're working? What's your plan for the next year?
Well, next year, I don't know if I can think that far in advance, but I have some local concerts here in Ithaca, New York, for the next couple of months, giving an organ concert on Wednesday, which I hope to record, and if I do well enough, put on YouTube. Um, so I have my own YouTube channel. I
Ah,
have
I
some
found it.
pages.
Yeah, here we are. Okay.
Yes. There's some of my own pieces on there. You can also check out music of mine on Spotify.
Right.
Um,
Let me bring that up. Yeah.
yes. Um, yeah, different albums on Spotify. One with my group Les Barracudas from Montreal. We
There
did
we
an
go.
album. Another album up there I did with Eric Tinkerhess, where we recorded the complete works of Forqueray for viol de gamme on harpsichord. A couple other of my compositions that are on there as well. Um, and I'm working on an album, a solo album to release within the next year.
That's awesome. Wow. Well, the great, I mean, I can say that, the great Nathan Mondry, everyone. Please keep doing what you're doing. And, actually, I had an idea for a panel interview with your good friend, Professor Canzano. That would be awesome, I think. We could certainly, I mean, time is short now, but we definitely have to have you back again, Nathan, and talk about more stuff. There's a lot more to cover in this wonderful world of early, and I know early music, that's the genre, but really, I mean, the implications of this, if they really understand what's happening, I mean, it's not, I mean, yes, it's the genre of early music, but the system, it's people from jazz can understand, can get it. There's something here that is a powerful system that people are neglecting, and its applications are enormous. So I'm just so excited to have you on the show, and I hope to have you back again, Nathan. The great Nathan Mondry, everyone. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Nikhil. This was a thrill. Talk to you soon.